I've got two switches here that are trunked together through one single trunk line. And, well, I've got a problem. I have so many devices working on these two switches, well, clearly you're not plugged in right now, but normally they are, that my trunk line is getting overwhelmed. And I need to come up with some way to increase the bandwidth of my trunk line. Now, I guess I could buy new switches that were higher speed, but I'd like to keep using what I have. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called port bonding. Now, port bonding has about a bazillion names to it. It's called link aggregation, channel bonding, port trunking, NIC teaming. There's a million different names for this, but CompTIA concentrates on the term port bonding, and that's what I want us to concentrate on. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to go through a process of taking 2 ports on each one of these devices. And by the way, this is not limited to 2. You can do it with more than 2 if you'd like. And they're going to work together as a team, and in essence, they will act as one single higher speed port. So right now, here's my setup. I've got this one trunk right here, and I'm going to set up 2 more ports, and I'm going to make 2 ports on each one of these switches work together and make all this happen. So to do that, we're going to have to go in, and this is also an opportunity for us to take a look at some Cisco IOS commands while we're at it. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, I'm already connected right now to one of the switches, and I know his IP address, so I'm just going to fire up PuTTY, and I'm going to connect to him, and let me show you how this all happens. All right, so here I am. I'm going to start up PuTTY. So I got PuTTY running. Let me do the password. Whoops. Type in the right password. There we go. I need to warn you, Network Plus is not going to test you on iOS. However, if you're doing a lot of stuff with switches, you're going to be working with a lot of Cisco stuff. Most of the heavy lifting we do is in the command line interface, which is iOS. So get used to this stuff. I figured this would be one great example to show you. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go onto each switch, and I'm going to take ports 23 and 24 of each switch, and I'm going to make them into a group. Now, in the Cisco IOS world, the first thing we do is we make a group, and then we go in and we assign the individual switch ports to that group. So follow the bouncing ball as I type in these commands. So we have to type in config terminal to get things started. Now the first thing we're going to do is interface port channel 1. So basically we've just told the switch to create a group, and they call it port channel, for us to connect these 2 physical ports together. Okay, now what I'm going to do is assign each of these to it. So we'll go in. So we're going to make sure it's a trunk. Then we go actually into the switch port itself, and I'm going to start with 23. All right, and now I'm going to assign it to that group. Okay, now you see I've typed in channel group 1 mode. Now, the protocol we're going to be using is called LACP, and that's for Link Access Control Protocol. There were earlier protocols, but this one pretty much I could connect switches from different brands and everybody to make this work. So what we need to do is we need to say, is this port going to be an active or a passive or whatever type of port we want? I'm going to say active, and that basically means if I connect you to something, look for another port that's ready to do some port bonding. So I'm going to just go ahead and set them as active. Okay, that's done. So what I need to do now is basically repeat the process. So this time we're going to go, so I'm going to the other port. All right, so I've now set up both of these ports to be part of that group. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and get the other one set up, and then we're going to come back and actually see how all this works. Okay, well, if I've done it all correctly, I'm going to go ahead and plug in another crossover, and let's see what happens. So I did it for 23 and 24 on both sides. And if I'm doing it right, we should see some lights begin to kick on, and we now have port bonded our ports 23 and 24 on each one of these guys. So it should be working. The best way to find out is to fire up PuTTY and take a look. Okay, so I've got PuTTY here and it's already logged in. So I'm going to type a very specific command that says show interface, and I want to see that port channel. Number 1. All right, there's a lot of gobbledygook here, but the important thing I want you to take a look at is right here. You see where it says BW 200,000 kilobits? What that's telling us is that port channel right there is now running 2 100 megabit connections together, so we have a total bandwidth of 200 megabits. So it's working. Yay, fantastic, and life is better. Now, there's a couple of things you need to be careful with here. If you remember, we set the port up as active. So you have a choice. With LACP, you can turn it on as active or as passive. When you set it up as active, that means I don't care what's happening, I'm sending out LACP traffic. If you set it up as passive, that means I will wait till I hear from a port that is sending me stuff and then I'll start talking. Cisco says set them all up as active. So you can do it the Cisco way. However, for the scope of the exam, as long as you set one as active and one as passive, it doesn't matter which one, or both active, it'll work. If you set them as both passive, it's not going to work. So make sure you know that. The last thing I want to touch on is that when you've got these up and running, it's a very, very bad idea to go into your configuration and take one of them out without first pulling out your cable. If you don't do that, you're going to create a broadcast storm, and there are lots and lots of famous stories on the internet of very large networks being taken down through one very, very careful miscalculation. So be careful.